Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're putting on our psychological goggles for a really extensive look at the hidden machinery of human interaction.
Social psychology.
Social psychology. It's this fascinating field that basically studies how our thoughts, our feelings, and our behaviors are just profoundly shaped by other people.
Yeah, by the real or even the imagined presence of others. We're going to unpack the fundamental mechanics of our social world.
Everything from those split-second decisions we make about strangers to, well, to the forces that make us fall in love or conform.
Exactly.
And the first thing that really jumps out from the sources is just the sheer speed, the efficiency at which our social brains work.
Terrifyingly fast, sometimes.
Right. So our mission today is to focus on that surprising speed of social judgment and the powerful cognitive biases we all carry. These are the mental shortcuts that help us, but also trip us up.
You ready?
Okay, let's unpack this.
We have to start with perception, specifically how we form impressions of other people.
And the research is clear on this, right? It's almost instant.
It is. We form first impressions so quickly, literally in a fraction of a second. Sometimes before the person has even said a word.
A fraction of a second. And what's so counterintuitive is that these initial really rushed impressions, which the sources say are often inaccurate.
Oh, very often.
They're incredibly sticky, they last forever, and are just notoriously difficult to change.
And there's a reason for that. An impression, it works like a social schema.
A mental template.
Exactly, a template. And once that template is set, any new information we get about that person is sort of filtered through it.
So if my first impression is that someone is untrustworthy, I'm going to be looking for evidence that confirms that.
You will. You'll unconsciously
Right.
ignore anything that contradicts it. It's a powerful effect.
And the sources say just judging people on facial features alone, which we do instantly, leads to highly inaccurate perceptions. Though I did see one silver lining.
Oh, yeah.
People who disclose personal information, show a little vulnerability, they tend to get more favorable impressions.
That absolutely helps. It breaks through that initial barrier. But speaking of entrenched templates, this takes us straight to stereotypes.
The ultimate cognitive shortcut.
Right. Characterizing all members of a group as having the same traits.
And the sources are clear. This isn't just about being efficient. Stereotypes have a function. They're used to justify social inequities.
They are. If you hold a negative stereotype about a group, you can use that to rationalize why they're treated differently. It reinforces the whole system.
And these impressions, these stereotypes, they don't just stay in our heads. They can actually change reality.
Through the self-fulfilling prophecy.
I love this concept because it shows how cyclical our behavior is.
Go on.
Well, if I think a new colleague is uncooperative, I might act standoffish.
Right.
And then because I'm being standoffish, they respond in kind. They become defensive or uncooperative, and boom. My initial, probably wrong impression is confirmed.
And that cycle brings us right into attributions. Our attempt to figure out the why behind someone's behavior.
Why did that colleague act defensively?
Exactly. Why did the pizza guy show up late? Attributions are the assumptions we make.
And they basically fall into two buckets, right?
Two main buckets. You have dispositional causes, which are internal.
The pizza guy is lazy.
Right. It's about who he is. And then you have situational causes, which are external.
He got stuck in a huge traffic jam.
And this is where we run into our first huge flaw in social thinking. The fundamental attribution error.
The FAE, this is the big one.
It's this tendency we have to attribute other people's behavior to their internal character.
Without really considering the situation they're in, we see the actor, but we don't see the stage.
Perfectly put. We look at the late pizza driver, and our brain just leaps to lazy employee, not multi-car pileup.
And what's fascinating here is the cultural piece. The sources say the FAE is way more common in individualistic cultures.
It is, like in North America or Western Europe. Collectivistic cultures are much more attuned to context and situational pressures.
That makes perfect sense. If your culture is all about the independent self, you're going to look for internal causes.
But the biases don't stop there, because we treat ourselves completely differently.
Of course we do.
That's the actor-observer effect. When I'm late, it's the traffic. The alarm clock failed. It's the situation.
But when you're late, it's because you're disorganized or, inconsiderate internal traits.
We give ourselves a pass that we deny to almost everyone else.
And then there's the self-serving bias, which is just pure ego protection.
Oh, absolutely.
If you get a good grade on a test, it's because you're smart, your ability.
Dispositional.
But if you get a bad grade, the professor was unfair. The test was badly written.
Situational.
Yeah.
It bolsters our self-esteem, which is why it's so common in the West. But again, you see that cultural difference. It's less common in East Asian cultures where humility might be prized more than individual ego.
This whole connection between our internal thoughts and external actions, it's a perfect bridge to our next topic, attitudes.
Right. Attitudes are just our evaluations. Do we like or dislike something? A person, an object, an issue.
And they're made up of three parts.
Three components, yeah. Cognitions, which are your beliefs, emotions, your feelings, and behaviors, your inclination to act a certain way.
And we get these mostly from our parents or friends, the media. The sources say genetics play a pretty minor role.
Very minor. But here's the really big counterintuitive insight.
Okay.
Attitudes are only modestly related to our actual behavior.
That is a huge takeaway. Because you assume if someone feels strongly about something, they'll act on it.
You'd think so. But external pressures, social norms, just plain convenience, they often win.
So you can believe strongly in protecting the environment, your attitude.
But you still might drive a gas guzzler because it's what you can afford, your behavior.
And that gap, that inconsistency between what we believe and what we do, that's cognitive dissonance, right?
Exactly. It's the emotional discomfort we feel from that hypocrisy. And we hate that feeling.
So we're motivated to change something.
Right. If you smoke but you believe smoking is deadly, you're in a state of dissonance. So you either have to quit, change the behavior.
Yeah. Or you change the attitude. You rationalize. It's not that bad, or the research is flawed.
You have to make them compatible again.
It's our drive to rationalize our choices. And this leads us perfectly into persuasion.
How to change attitudes.
Yeah. And here's where it gets really interesting with the elaboration likelihood model, the ELM.
The ELM basically says we can be persuaded through one of two routes, depending on how much we're paying attention.
Yeah.
First is the central processing route. This is when you care a lot about the topic. You're motivated, you're focused.
So you're listening carefully to the actual message. You're analyzing the facts, the logic.
Exactly. And if you're persuaded this way, the attitude change is strong and it lasts.
But then there's the other route.
The peripheral processing route. This is what happens when we're distracted or disinterested, or maybe the topic is just too complex.
Okay, so we're not focused on the message itself.
No, you focus on cues that are not central to the message. Peripheral cues.
This is why advertisers use famous athletes to sell things.
Precisely. You're not paying attention to the details of the car. You're persuaded by the likable, famous person driving it. That's the peripheral cue.
And successful persuasion depends on a few variables, right? The source, the message.
Yep. Source variables. Is the person credible? Likable? Message variables. Does it use emotional appeals? And recipient variables. Is the person you're talking to in a good mood? Are they easily persuaded?
So once we've influenced someone, we have to talk about how we actually relate to them. Let's get into attraction.
Attraction is defined as, well, feelings of liking someone and having positive thoughts about them. And it's driven by four main factors.
Oh, what are they?
Similarity, physical attractiveness, proximity, and reciprocity.
Similarity seems huge. We like people who are like us.
We do, because it validates us. It reinforces our own self-concept. It makes us feel like our view of the world is the right one.
It's a psychological comfort.
It is. Then there's physical attractiveness, which is a key factor everywhere. Though the sources point out that what's considered beautiful can vary a lot by culture.
And proximity is just being near someone.
Being near them, yeah. It increases interaction, which increases attraction. But there's a catch.
What's that?
If you already dislike someone, proximity can actually make you dislike them more.
That's true. And finally, reciprocity.
Liking those who like us back. It's a simple, powerful rule.
But I have to ask about the note in the sources on this. It says playing hard to get may make you hard to forget.
It's nuanced. I mean, reciprocity is the strongest rule. But the sources do acknowledge that in some romantic contexts, a little bit of a challenge can, well, it can heighten the perceived value of the person.
So it's not just a cliche.
Not entirely, no. Yeah. But predictable liking is usually the safer bet.
And when attraction gets deeper, we get to Sternberg's model of love.
The triangular model, yeah. He breaks love down into three core components.
Intimacy, passion, and
decision commitment. Intimacy is that close bond. Passion is the intense desire. And commitment is the conscious decision to maintain the love.
And different combinations of those give you all the different types of love. Okay, shifting from attraction to action. Pro-social behavior. Helping. Why do we help?
It often comes down to motive. A researcher named Batson identified two main types.
Which are?
Altruistic motives, which are pure and unselfish. You help just because you care. And then self-centered motives.
Like helping to avoid feeling guilty or to look good to others.
Right. And whether we help or not is incredibly situational. For instance, if a situation is ambiguous,
Like you see two people arguing, but you can't tell if it's serious or not.
you're much less likely to step in. Perceived cost also matters. If helping is risky, we're less likely to do it.
But the most famous finding is the diffusion of responsibility.
The bystander effect, yeah.
Hmm.
People are significantly less likely to help if there are more bystanders around.
Because everyone assumes someone else will do it.
The responsibility is spread out across the crowd.
So wait, if that's true, how do we explain some other things in the sources? Like people with baby face features are more likely to get help. Or that women in need get more help from strangers than men do. Doesn't that contradict the idea that the situation is everything?
That's a great question. It's not so much a conflict as an overlay. Those specific characteristics, like perceived innocence or social roles, they act as immediate cues.
Okay.
They can heighten our empathy or lower the psychological cost of helping, which can sometimes override the situational inertia from, say, diffusion of responsibility.
Ah, I see. They're like little pull factors that cut through the noise.
Exactly.
Okay, from connection to conflict, we have to talk about prejudice and discrimination.
Prejudice is that preconceived attitude, usually unfavorable. And like any attitude, it has the three components.
Cognitive, emotional, behavioral.
The cognitive part is the stereotype, the emotional part is the feeling of dislike, and the behavioral part is the inclination to, well, to discriminate.
And discrimination is the actual behavior, the unfair treatment, denial of housing, jobs.
And the sources explain that the root of this is a basic cognitive tendency to categorize our world into in-groups.
The groups we belong to. Us.
And in out-groups. Them.
And that categorization is immediately biased.
Immediately, it leads to in-group favoritism and out-group negativism. We also fall prey to out-group homogeneity.
Which is thinking that they are all alike while we are all unique and complex individuals.
Exactly.
So if this is a basic cognitive function, how do we fix it?
Well, the contact hypothesis from Gordon Allport gives us a roadmap.
But it's not just about putting people in a room together.
No, simple contact isn't enough. Allport laid out 4 very specific conditions.
Okay.
You need social and institutional support. You need real opportunities for people to get acquainted. The groups have to have equal status. And, most importantly,
They need to work on a cooperative goal.
a common cooperative goal. That's the key.
Yeah.
Working together forces those group identities to blur.
And when groups clash, you often get aggression.
And aggression is complex. The sources are clear. There's no single cause. You have biological influences, genes, hormones,
The social cognitive factors, like learning aggression from watching it.
observational learning, right, from family or the media, and then sociocultural factors like poverty and neglect. Even the environment plays a role.
The link between high temperatures and hostile thoughts.
Yeah, a fascinating and slightly worrying finding.
Okay, that brings us to our final section. The immense power of the group over the individual, starting with our own identity.
Our psychological identity has 2 parts. Personal identity, your unique self, and social identity, your sense of self from the groups you belong to.
And social identity is more prominent in collectivist cultures.
It is. And once we're in a group, we face this immediate, powerful pressure to conform.
To adjust our behavior to match the group's norms, and the classic study on this is still shocking.
Solomon Asch's line study.
Right. He had people in a group judge the length of lines, but everyone else in the group was an actor told to give the wrong answer.
And the finding was that 3 out of 4 real participants were willing to conform to a group judgment that was obviously false.
It's terrifying. Why do we ignore what our own eyes are telling us?
It's a mix of things. Some people assume the majority must be right. Others are just worried about being accepted. They don't want to be the one dissenting voice.
It's just easier to go along.
Much easier.
So conformity is about fitting in. Compliance is about doing what others ask.
And this is where we see manipulative sales tactics that exploit our psychology.
Like the lowball technique.
Yep. They offer a low price to get you committed.
Okay.
Then they add on hidden costs. And you accept because you want to be consistent with your initial decision.
Or the foot in the door. Get you to agree to a small request first.
Which makes it much more likely you'll agree to a bigger request later.
And then the opposite, the door in the face.
Start with a huge, unreasonable request that you'll obviously refuse.
Right.
Then they follow up with a much smaller, more reasonable request. You feel like they've made a concession, so you feel obligated to reciprocate and say yes.
It's brilliant and devious. But the ultimate exploration of this kind of pressure has to be obedience to authority.
Stanley Milgram.
His research was trying to understand how ordinary people could commit atrocities in wartime.
And his key finding was just staggering. Participants were willing to deliver what they thought were dangerous, even lethal electric shocks to another person.
Simply because an authority figure in a lab coat told them to.
The percentage that went all the way to the highest shock level was alarmingly high.
And the sources break down why. Part of it is legitimization of authority. We're taught not to question the person in charge.
Right, and social validation, if the authority figure is acting like this is normal, then it must be okay. Plus, it starts small. The shocks increase incrementally, so it's hard to find the right place to draw a line and stop.
And the ethical fallout from this study was immense.
It was. The deception, the emotional distress it caused participants, it directly led to the strict ethical guidelines we have in psychology today.
Okay, finally, let's touch on how groups affect our actual performance.
Sometimes they make it better. That's social facilitation. We tend to work harder in the presence of others, but, and this is a key detail, only on simple, well-practiced tasks.
On complex tasks, an audience can actually make you perform worse.
It can. And then you have the flip side, social loafing.
My favorite term. Expending less effort in a group because you figure someone else will pick up the slack.
Your individual contribution feels less accountable. And when groups have to make a decision, you run the risk of groupthink.
Where reaching a consensus becomes more important than critically examining the issue. Everyone wants to agree, so nobody speaks up.
Especially when the group is very close-knit, under threat, and has a strong-willed leader.
What's fascinating looking back at all this is just the immense power of social interaction. From those instant judgments we make and the biases we use to the overwhelming pressures of conformity and obedience.
These models, they don't just explain what we do. They explain why we find ourselves making these decisions, often without even thinking about it.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener?
It means that a lot of your behavior isn't being driven by some rational internal self. It's driven by your context, by group pressure, by these cognitive shortcuts. It's a very humbling realization.
But it also gives you the tools to deconstruct your own reactions, to understand why you agree to things, why you conform. That self-awareness is truly empowering.
And for a final thought to mull over, we talked about how biases like the fundamental attribution error and the self-serving bias help us maintain our self-esteem, especially in Western cultures.
Right.
This raises a really important question. If these attribution errors help us feel good about ourselves, are there hidden social costs that come with that benefit?
Meaning what?
Meaning, are there costs associated with the self-serving bias that we benefit from in Western cultures that collectivist societies might avoid by prioritizing the situation over individual credit? Does bolstering the individual self come at a hidden price for the group as a whole?
A perfect, challenging question to end on. Thank you for sharing your sources and letting us take this deep dive into the hidden rules of social psychology.